Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the December 17th meeting of the Regional Transportation Commission. We're going to start out with a call to order. Madam Clerk.
Christina Swallow.
Here.
Von Hartung.
Here.
Ed Lawson.
Here.
Neil Majardin.
Here.
Bill Thomas.
Here.
Adam Spear.
Here.
Bob Lucy and Oscar Delgado are not in attendance today. Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. At this time, we will move into the Pledge of Allegiance. Could we have Garth Oaksall lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Garth, and welcome everybody. At this time, we will move into item 1.3, the APWA Nevada Chapter Award presentation. Dina Gray is presenting. Deanna, my apologies. I took my glasses off.
Good morning. Deanna Gray. I'm President-elect of American Public Works Association's Nevada chapter. And every year we offer public agencies in Nevada an opportunity to compete for our coveted Project of the Year award. And this year at our fall conference, we actually had, I don't know if it was record number, but it was close to record number of submittals in 4 different categories. So we are pleased to present to the RTC of Washoe County the Project of the Year Award for the Virginia Street Bus Rapid Transit Extension Project. Congratulations.
Thank you, Brian Stewart, Director of Engineering. Thank you, APWA, the Nevada chapter in particular, for the opportunity for us to be able to showcase our projects and the hard work we did. Jeff Wilbrecht, the project manager for this, did an outstanding job, and his work is reflected in these awards that we get. So thank you for that opportunity and the award.
Director Thomas.
Hey, photo time.
Yes, can we get with the board?
Absolutely. As we've got anybody that was involved with the Virginia Street project, which I would argue is certainly the most influential project during my tenure on the RTC board. What a project that is truly changing the lives of safety as well as the traffic through Virginia Street. So fantastic. Anybody involved? Michael, are you up here? That was fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, Madam Clerk, at this time we're moving on to item 3, the approval of the agenda. Director Thomas, do we have any items to pull or modify?
Madam Chair, we do not.
Oh, my apologies. We're going to back up. We have general public comment, and we are going to start with Dora Martinez.
I think it's on. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Madam Chair Neil Majardin. Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Dora Martinez. I represent the Nevada Disability Peer Action Coalition. Thank you for negotiating and getting the bus back on track. One of my requests is, and I talked to Mark Maloney regarding this, he is the ADA coordinator, I think, for RTC, is that can you please make or have the audible bus stop calls, put them back to the bus. As a blind traveler, and some people who can't see the sign on where to get off, the right bus stop, they need those audible announcements. I need them because obviously I can't see and my dog can't read. A lot of people think dogs can read, but they can't. They're service dogs. All they do is guide me and avoid obstacles. So I just want to be clear about that. So it would be really beneficial to not just the blind passengers, but people who do not read English or, that needs that audible bus stop calls. Also, I've been requesting this for the last 5 years when David Chickling was around. Please put signage, braille signage on the bus stop. Not everybody has an iPhone or a smartphone, so they do need to touch the pole and know that they're in the right stop, especially at the bus stations, Centennial, the Meadowwood Mall, Island, and the city of Reno. It's quite cumbersome to navigate around those stations, especially when there's other folks around. I realize I'm not the only one around there. There's other folks, and it would be very beneficial. And sometimes when we are on hold, when I call in to the customer service and waiting to get help, bus has left, and I'm stranded. And it's, as you know, once an hour or more because due to the lack of drivers. Also, thank you, Mr. Bill Thomas, and whoever did this, taking the agenda and the item out 2 months ago regarding the changing the route for next month. I appreciate that because a lot of people who are paratransit riders do need to go to dialysis, and when the bus route, the fixed route are not running, it affects the RTC paratransit riders. So I appreciate that. And next month I will share a video about people who are blind trying to navigate the cities and trying to locate bus stops. And I think that'll be more beneficial because I know you guys are all sighted. It's better that you guys see what we need to do to find the bus stop and be more independent in our beautiful community. Also, I think, one more, please. I think a lot of RTC paratransit drivers who are trained for people with disability are moved to the flex, and therefore a lot of us who rely on paratransit and people who have appointments are left behind and waiting for their appointments. So please have I think it's the MTM company, have the MTM company stop putting our best access drivers to the flex ride, because we need those drivers and they are trained, especially for us, even though they're earning less than $10 an hour. Please have that, give them a raise to maybe $20 an hour. Thank you.
Thank you, Dora. Thank you very much. Chris Fuqua.
Good morning, Board. My name is, for the record, Chris Fuqua. I am the Vice President of Teamsters Local 533. Your absence last month was noted. It would appear that the Board did not want to be present and be held accountable for the third keyless strike. As a Board, you could have prevented all three of these strikes, but month after month, our words of caution were ignored, except in October, when some members of the Board finally spoke up in support of wage increases for our members. But where were you last month? Where were you last month when we were fighting Keolis for wage increases and pension? The Teamsters were in negotiations with Keolis, and you guys were off, not accountable. You guys didn't have a quorum. You guys should have something in place to make sure there's a quorum every month. Where were your voices last month? Our members had to fight and strike to retain benefits that they've had for decades, as well as a fair increase in wages and pension. It took 3 strikes, 60 days without pay for our members before we were able to get a contract. Bill, am I interrupting you guys? It took 3 strikes, 60 days without pay before we were able to get a contract ratified. You as a Board could have prevented these strikes, but you failed to act. You could have ended these strikes sooner, but again, you failed to act. I am sure you already know, but I want to make sure everybody that hears my voice knows that on December 1st, 2021, just a few weeks ago, our neighboring transit board, Tahoe Transportation District, approved an across-the-board $4 wage increase to all union-held positions. That's a $4 wage increase. That's an average wage increase of 20% an hour for their transit operators, 20%. While down here, we had to fight the RTC and Keyless for a 5.5 increase. The TDD board recognized they had to take action, not during negotiations, but now. This is what happens when a transit board, a transit company, and a union work together. We need that here. Though the Keyless contract has been ratified, our fight is not over. On July 1, 2022, the Teamsters contract with the RTC Access contractor expires. The union will be standing by our member side in this fight for higher wages and pension. My question to you, the RTC board, are you going to support these essential workers, or are you going to remain silent and ignore them as much as you did our essential workers at Keolis? We look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ryan McKinney?
Hello, my name is Ryan McKinney. I lived here a long time, and I have to agree, there's some good people and there's some bad things that have been happening lately. The good things are the people that have been running this lately. For example, Miss Denise Thompson, whenever I call, have a concern or an idea, she's always available and I can always get a hold of her. On the access side, Miss Trinidad, Miss Petra Baba, found any concerns or problems, I can get a hold of them, and they're willing to communicate and give some great ideas or give some better ways for me to use access and be a good, productive member of society. Now, please, these are not bashing, these are critiques to make the ride system, the access system better for everybody. For example, how Ms. Martinez was talking about the audible not being announced by riders, that's an ADA violation. When the riders don't announce it each time, that's an ADA violation. You guys know that, and they have to announce it. When they're getting lazy and not announcing it, people like me who are blind, Ms. Martinez who are blind, we miss our stops. Again, with the Braille signs. Those two things, that's an ADA violation. You gotta address that. And for the strike, if I was a judge and if the community want to bring a class action lawsuit against the board, Kunis, and the Teamsters, you guys would have been nailed for 60%, Teamsters nailed for 20%, Qs for 20%. And the reason you guys would have got 60% because of what Mr. Vice President of Teamsters said of your ineptness, leadership, and silence of how you're dealing with a strike. It took 3 strikes to get all the stuff done of the health pension, the health benefits, the pension, the wages, and the cafe scheduling. What were you guys doing? For Mr. Jordan, you want to run for mayor? And you're saying, you should have been speaking up this whole time saying, Kunis and Teamsters, get in there, do your job, and do it right the first time. Let's address all these problems right the first time of the cafe scheduling, the pension, the wages, the health contributions. But no one on that board had the cojones or the foresight or the leadership to tell the Teamsters and Kunis, go in the room, sit down, and Teamsters are used to be on a contract. And from my understanding, Kunis, if you want to have the contract renewed this next year, you do that and get the strike so you're not affecting the whole community. Do you know how bad it got because of the strike? But no, you didn't how bad. It got really bad. People were waiting at times to get home, to get to work. They pay taxes. They pay your guys' salaries. And again, Mr. Storm, if you do want to run for mayor, people will know how bad. This is how bad. At least you want to be running mayor for Reno, and also you want to try and cap the fuel index. What are we doing here?
Thank you very much. Ramona Coker?
Is it okay if I take this off to speak?
No.
No, okay, not a problem. Good morning, my name is Ramona Coker. Today is my 45th birthday, and I'm afraid to ride the bus. The reason I'm afraid to ride the bus is simple. As of March 12, 2019, everything was great. I was a student at TMCC working to get my degree in web development. I was employed by a local nonprofit organization to teach other visually impaired individuals how to use Apple products. And I even went to Rail City 3 days a week to play bingo. And a lot of that was facilitated by RTC. Now, we know the pandemic hit, and for the first year, everybody was staying at home, sheltering in place, working on vaccinations. But that second year, guys, people started opening back up, trying to go back to their lives, trying to get better, but there were no buses. There were strikes. There were delayed routes. I have notifications on my phone that tell me my favorite buses so that I know if they're going to be there or not, but all they keep saying is no service, route delays. Doesn't matter how many free trips that you hand out or free rides you hand out, that doesn't change. And it's affecting the community in ways you couldn't imagine. We all know it takes about an hour to get somewhere on the bus. We accept that. We schedule our lives around it. But when you get on the bus and you don't know if it's going to take you an hour to get home or 4, sitting out in the cold, waiting on a bus that's never going to come, that's frightening, especially for a person who can't see, okay? And anyone else. I mean, I know you guys wrap up these buses, you buy all these electric buses, they're all nice, you want to market to the more affluent, to be a greener human being, but really, your services are needed most by the communities that can't afford cars, that can't drive, okay, that can't afford to get a lift when their bus doesn't come. Those people are us. And you, as the bus system, you guys in the body of the community, you are the heart, okay? You pump people in and out of places they need to be. And just like the human body, if the heart dies, so does body. I can count on my hands, both hands, how many times I've left my home since March 13th of 2019. But I don't think any of you can understand that because you probably leave more than that in a month. There are people at home suffering from anxiety, suffering from stress, suffering from depression because they can't get out and about in their lives again, because they can't depend on your buses to be there on time. So, respectfully, that whatever you need to do to make this right, whatever you need to do to fix this, I respectfully request that you get a good foot on it because there are people in this community that are suffering and dying. It's that serious. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Ramona. Gary Watson? I don't have any further general public comment after this public commenter. If anybody would like to public comment, please come up and fill out a form.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Gary Watson, President, Teamsters Local 533. The transit system has been failing long before you and Keolis lost the strikes to my brave membership. It has been failing since Keolis took over in July of 2019. It has been failing due to the lack of responsible management. Such management that is accounted for by Bill Thomas, Mark Maloney, and all of you, the board members. You should have been listening to the workers and passengers long before the summer of 2021. We all knew the RTC wasn't a neutral party to our negotiations long before Mr. Thomas gravely pledged his support to Keolis, a miscalculated approach by Mr. Thomas. It is unfortunate you as elected leaders could not lead and help guide your contractor to resolve these matters amicable without a labor dispute. Your inability to use your elected voice failed this system. It did. Failed it so badly for the citizens, transit passengers, and the workers for 60 days. 60 days the workers lost pay. The passengers suffered pay loss and job loss. Those losses have a domino effect on businesses in this community. Thankfully, the U.S. Secretary of Labor, Marty Walsh, stepped in and resolved the conflict for these essential workers. You once praised for their heroic efforts during the pandemic, but disregarded when they deserved a livable wage in this growing market. This didn't need to get to the Labor Secretary's desk. If you would have done your job and have been appointed, that you have been appointed and elected for. Listen, learn, watch, and talk to these essential workers and the passengers. They are the transit system, not Keolis, not you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, do we have any further public comment?
Madam Chair, we had 5 comments that came in through the RTC website, which I emailed to the commissioners last evening. And that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we'll move on to item 3, the approval of the agenda. Director Thomas, do we have any items to change?
We do not, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. May I get a motion?
So moved to approve. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Item 4, consent items. Do any members have any items they wish to pull out for discussion? Okay, hearing none, may I get a motion? Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Okay, we are on item 5. Madam Clerk, I did not see any public comment for the consent agenda, nor do I see any for item 5. Is that correct?
You're correct.
Okay, we'll move on to item 5.1, report on the fiscal year annual CAFR. Comprehensive financial report.
Good morning, Commissioners. Stephanie Haddock, Director of Finance, for the record. It's my great pleasure to introduce Yelena Williams, who is our financial manager. She oversees our audit, and this year she's going to give you the presentation. We'll both be here for any questions that you have.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Yelena Williams, Financial Manager at RTC. I'm going to give an overview of the fiscal year 2021 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report and our annual audit. I will start with revenues. Our total revenues were at $193 million for fiscal year 2021, which is up 3.5% or $6.4 million over fiscal year 2020. Our largest revenue is motor vehicle fuel tax, and as shown on the pie chart, it's at 47.7% of total revenues. This comes to $92 million, which is $2.4 million or 2.7% over budget, and up $5.6 million or 7.7% over the prior year. This increase is primarily due to increases in gasoline gallons sold, resulting from increased tourism, return to in-person school, and the reduction of remote work as employees return to the offices. Next revenue source is public transportation or sales tax.
Could I ask one question for clarity for the record? When you talked about the fuel tax dollars and the increase?
Yes, $92 million.
Yes, can you clarify for me that those dollars cannot be, by legislation, they cannot be used for transit, correct?
That's correct. We're using them for the road, street, and highway program.
Okay, streets and highways. Thank you very much. Yes, Commissioner Hartman.
Can you also clarify for us, do any governmental agencies pay that tax?
Do they pay or they receive?
Pay that tax.
We do, as a fuel tax, each time the fuel is purchased, we do pay the fuel tax.
Yeah, but we are exempt from the local taxes. yes.
Correct. That's
Sales.
what I,
Se- No, from.
Thank you,
From
Stephanie.
fuel taxes as well.
that's what I wanted to put on the record. There seems to be some question out there with some folks that,
Not from the federal taxes. They still have to pay federal taxes, but they are exempt from local taxes.
RTC 5 gas tax is what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. The next revenue source is public transportation or sales tax. I think at $39.1 million, or 20.3% of total revenues. There was an increase of sales tax in fiscal year 2021 of $9.5 million, or 32.3% to budget, and it also up $5.6 million, or 16.7% over the prior year. Contributing factor for sales tax increase was the increased retail sales tax, taxable retail sales for the Washoe County. 28% of total revenues came from federal operating and capital grants. Total amount was $54 million, which represent $3.8 million, or 6.5% over budget, and $6.2 million, or 13% increase compared to the prior year. The $54 million of the federal capital and operating grants consist of the following. We received $17 million in federal funds that were used for the purchase of the 17 hybrid electric buses, 2 expansion electrical buses, and 12 replacement paratransit vans. Additionally, we received $26 million in federal funds that were used for the operating expenses. These are stimulus funds. Small Start grants amounted to $10 million, and they were used for the construction of the Virginia Street project. Additionally, RTC received $8 million in regional road impact fees. Revenues were up $3 million, or 60% compared to budget, and $0.6 million, or 8.6% over the last year. Collected RIF revenues were used for capacity improvements to the regional road system.
Yes, Commissioner Hartung.
And you may not be able to answer this, Stephanie, you may have to, or some other staff member. Are we putting in this number, the number of credits that are turned in?
No, that is purely cash impact fees.
That's just straight RIF fees. Okay, so that is all cash. Okay, thank you.
Additionally, we have received $3.3 million in passenger fares. It's down $1 million, or 22.5% in comparison to budget, and down $1 million, or 23.4% over the prior year. RTC's ridership decreased 37% over the prior year due to COVID-19 pandemic, which was a reason for decreased passenger fare revenues.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Do we have or can we get a slide in the future that gives a historical sales tax analysis and the volatility within it? I mean, a snapshot here today would give a rather robust visual of some of those things, and I'm just wondering historically how that has performed, and it's sort of one-time things that we may be able to do, and this is probably going forward for our strategic planning. One-time things we may be able to do to address some issues we've been having that aren't ongoing, because I think that's the question, right? There's no determination of what next month's or next year's sales tax may be, and there's great volatility. But when it comes to one-time monies, what might we be able to do with that? So I guess maybe for our retreat or for our strategic planning, if we could get a historical analysis of the sales tax.
That would be my suggestion. We can bring that in January.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I apologize for interrupting.
We do have that information available as well. So Thank you.
Thank you.
Great addition. As noted on the chart, there was a negative amount in the investment and other miscellaneous revenues. And this is due to the loss that occurred during the sale of 5 parcels to UNR. And additionally, fiscal year 21 investment interest was $4 million lower in comparison to fiscal year 2020 due to lower earnings in comparison to prior year. Next slide is our expenditures. Total expenditures were at $151 million for fiscal year 2021. It's down $11 million or 7% from the prior year. The largest expenditures were at $75 million was in street and highway project, which is a decrease of $12 million in comparison to prior year. And the primarily decrease is due to Virginia Street project. Expenditures were much higher in fiscal year 2020 for this project. Please note, RTC spent $63 million in regional street and highway projects in fiscal year 2021 and $6 million for the RIF projects. More details on the projects completed during fiscal year 2021 you can find in our ACFR on pages 86 through 101. And we have a detailed list with the amounts and names of the projects. The next expenditure is $41 million we spend in contract expenditures. This amount is the same as in prior year. And as noted earlier, our passenger fare revenues decreased in fiscal year 2021 due to decrease in ridership. However, RTC maintained our regular operating services during fiscal year 2021. $23 million was spent in debt services, and that represents about 15% of our total expenditures. $9 million was spent in access operating expenditures, and this amount is flat over the last year and down $3 million from the budget. The RTC access service levels were lower for the current fiscal year, and demand for paratransit services decreased due to COVID-19 pandemic. RTC Access operated at 15% lower revenue vehicle hours in fiscal year 2021 in comparison with fiscal year 2020. And that's lowered our overall access operating cost. We also had $3 million in MPO expenditures for the planning studies that were completed and that were not completed, but expensed in fiscal year 2021. This amount is the same as in prior year fiscal year, as in prior year. Total RTC's expenditures were $36 million under budget for fiscal year 2021. All savings are being carried forward to fiscal year 2022 budget and will be used for the construction projects, federal match requirements, and debt payment obligation. Lastly is our net position. Net position is a good indicator of our overall financial position. At the close of fiscal year 2021, our total liabilities exceeded total assets by $64 million. RTC's negative net position results from outstanding revenues bond financing of infrastructure assets that are not included in RTC's capital asset. RTC's net position consists of 3 categories: net investment in capital assets, restricted and unrestricted net position. RTC's net RTC's investment in capital assets increased $2.6 million over the last year. And the main reason of this increase is due to the purchase of the additional replacement buses and paratransit vans. Restricted net position increased $23.7 million from the prior year due to increased cash from revenues restricted from street and highway construction and public transportation. Restricted net position consists of restricted assets that are externally imposed by state statutes, bond covenants, and grant regulations. Total RTC's negative and restricted net position decreased $22.4 million from the prior year, and that's due to increases in cash balances. Next slide is related to our audit. Results, the independent auditors rendered unmodified opinion on that their RTC's financial statements are presented with generally accepted accounting principles. It is the highest possible rating. We have no findings or management comments on the financial audits, and additionally, we have no findings or management comments on the single audit, which is a review of the general grant of the federal grants. This was my overview of our annual financial report and our annual audit. I encourage you to review our annual financial report if you would like to get more details and obtain further understanding. And I also would like to express my appreciation to all RTC staff for the everyday work great work that they do that helped us to get this clean audit and no findings. And also it helped us to complete our financial report timely. Special recognition goes to dedicated finance staff, and especially to Hannah Yu and Nelia Beelan. And I want to express appreciation to Nicole Coots. She prepared graphics for our annual report. Additionally, I would like to say thank you to our independent auditors at Crow. They have a phenomenal team and great to work with. And Scott Nickerson is on the phone line to answer any questions or provide any additional comments. And I don't know if, I believe Scott can hear us on the phone now. And if Scott has any additional comments, it's a good time to add.
Sure. This is Scott Nickerson from Crow. Appreciate working with RTC this year. And as indicated by Elena's report, we did issue a clean opinion on your financial statements and on the federal grant reporting. And so we appreciate the efforts that management's made throughout the year to come to the conclusion of a clean audit report. I think the way I think about it is it's as expected of the board and never taken for granted, because it's the day-to-day work that their team does that results in that result. We're thrilled to continue working with RTC as we work with transit agencies across the country, and we're proud to have RTC as our client. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will now move into board comments or questions.
Great job, as usual.
Okay. I'm not really seeing any at this time. Thank you very much. I know this is something that we will be dissecting and discussing in all of its complexities. My kudos to the staff. This is a big ship with lots of complexities and arms to it that are regulated heavily by different jurisdictions and entities. And I appreciate staffs. And you can't mix monies. You can't. There's certain criterias with each different bucket. And to get such a clean audit is really commendable. So kudos to staff, the entire accounting department. Stephanie, all of you have done just a tremendous job. So kudos to all of you.
Actually, Madam Chair,
Yes,
I
Commissioner
do have a
Hartung.
question. So do we account in our debt somewhere the outstanding credits in the market that are being held out there by private entities?
No,
We don't, really? Okay. That's a liability, absolutely. Okay, all right, I'll ask for an agenda item later. Thank you.
Thank you all very much, and thank you for allowing me to present today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, great job. All right, Madam Clerk, I don't believe we had any public comment on that item.
No, we do not.
Thank you very much. Moving on to 5.2, approve the RTC federal priorities. Is this you, Director Thomas?
It is, Madam Chair, and appreciate the opportunity to present to the board our annual federal priorities list, and there it is. I did want to start this off by acknowledging, which I'll talk about a little bit later, and I don't know if Christina is going to mention it in her presentation, but there's been a lot of conversation lately about infrastructure, particularly at the federal level, and a lot of representations, which I think can be very confusing to people about what is or isn't happening with those funds. Under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which is commonly known as the bipartisan infrastructure bill, and a substantial amount of revenues have been placed into infrastructure, but those have been placed strategically into different functions and purposes. So part of what you'll see when we do our federal priorities, and I'll just go through those quickly, is that
Excuse me, Mr. Thomas, I'm sorry to interrupt. We didn't get a motion on the last item?
Oh, thank you very much. Good catch, Denise. Appreciate that. All right, item 5. We're going to back up to item 5.1. May I get a motion?
To accept the report, so moved.
I have a motion, a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, back to you, Bill.
So if I can get the next slide, please. We have been asked, and frequently are asked, particularly from our federal delegation as well as our team that works in DC, to make sure that our community is properly represented and gets its fair share of the revenues that are distributed by the federal government, to present them with a priority list. So what we're giving to you today is looking forward for the next year, what we see as the priorities based on information that's included in the RTP, as well as comments that we've received from the community and each of you. So I wanted to talk about the top 6 here. The first one is the bus maintenance facility replacement. So as I'm sure you all are aware, at a future phase of the Spaghetti Bowl project, I think it's the last one, I can't remember if it's 5 or 6, the Villanova facility will need to be replaced and decommissioned. So we have put that, which will be a major capital expense, as a priority in terms of the opportunity, should it come through in terms of either grants or allocations, specifically targeted at capital projects associated with transit, that would be our top priority. The second item there, Highland Ranch Parkway Pyramid Highway intersection, that's an improvement that was identified in the very large project that has multiple components, which is known as the Spanish Springs to 395 connector. So the idea here would be for us to focus on our efforts to obtain federal funding to improve that intersection, which is a critical part of not only that project I mentioned, but also the traffic flow into and out of that particular area of Sparks and Washoe County. The Keystone Avenue project is one that is specifically related to the bridge. That bridge is, as I understand it, the worst rated bridge in our community. And so we are proposing that become our top priority in terms of funds that are set aside specifically for bridge repair and replacement, which again is a separate funding category as opposed to roads and other and transit facilities. In addition, Sierra Street Bridge, which is also, it's not as highly, it's not in the same position in terms of the state of the facility, but it is important in the next one up. So we included the Sierra Street Bridge as also our second project as far as bridge replacement and repair. Sparks Boulevard project, which is well underway, and we are actually getting close to the final steps of the environmental study. That would be one that we would propose to be included as a project for which we seek out federal funding. And then lastly, an issue that has been in the forefront for quite a while in terms of the activities happening in the North Valleys is funding focused on the 395 widening. And just to be clear, that would be, there's multiple phases in terms of that project, so we would be working closely with NDOT if there were an opportunity for that project to focus on what segment of 395, but ultimately the planning calls for that whole section from, I believe, all the way out to Stead Boulevard back into the Spaghetti Bowl. So that's the purpose of that. And then if I can get the next slide, just to go over some other things that some of them have been on for a while and things we continue to say, but just wanted to run through those to make sure the board and the public are aware. Direct funding to metropolitan planning agencies or organizations, and the desire there is one of the things we learned as we went through the pandemic and saw the way things operated, that there would be opportunities to the extent it works for all parties involved for funding sources, much like we do with FTA, that come directly to the agencies that put them out. It would save time and allow us to put the money to work quicker. Same thing with environmental streamlining, looking at some specific changes where the process isn't harmed, but it can be expedited, and again, we can get these projects to the community quicker. We have asked for continuously that the federal government fully fund the highway and mass transit programs, both of which are very critical to us in terms of our operations. We've also asked that the Federal Transit Administration be funded significantly, or at least in a manner in which they can respond to our needs. They have a challenge because of the legal processes that require their participation and involvement whenever we have projects, and our request here is simply that they properly fund their staff to be able to keep those projects moving and, again, get them out on the streets to the people that need them. We've asked for permitting of the tapered match, which really is one thing we found as we've done some of our grants. We'd like the ability for the federal money to be spent down first and then local money last. So that's what that's all about. We definitely wanted to note the effort in Washoe County with the public lands bill and how that, even though it's not directly an RTC issue, that we are engaged and involved in that we support that project, that effort going forward. And then these last couple ones are things that we've specifically had on before that I won't go into in detail, but as you can see, I think have been and continue to be very important things for our community. So with that, I will conclude my briefing on the federal priorities and ask for your either endorsement or modification or adjustment of these priorities. And again, these are for this year. We certainly have opportunities as things come up to pivot and change. It just helps us in terms of our federal delegation if we can be focused in their efforts as far as looking for federal money to apply and put into our community, that we tell them what our best needs or most important needs are. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a couple of questions, and then we'll go to the board. I just have, this is obviously, it's certainly in my 9 years, this is not something that we've had historically had some federal funding to this degree coming into this body. My question is, can you go back one slide to the very first group of, I think it was 6? Okay, so my question is, in looking at these, are these to be, these projects as selected, these to be, I hate to use the word shovel-ready, but kind of shovel-ready? Is that why these were chosen? And second, is it the intention to partner with our other agencies, as in NDOT or the City of Reno, City of Sparks, and come as a region and say, these are our top 5 priorities of the region, and that has more swing? Or do we come with our top 6, NDOT comes with their top 6, Sparks comes with, you know what I'm trying to say? I don't understand, because we've not gone through this before.
First, I would say, and certainly you might ask Christina to weigh in because she's very aware of this process too, is I think there's some misconceptions about how this money is being rolled out. It's not a big blanket amount of money. Part of it is set as increases in existing programs. So in other words, programs that exist that have processes and procedures, much of which goes directly to the state, some of it comes directly to us, some of it will go to grant programs. So that's the first thing. The second thing, as I mentioned earlier, these funds have been set aside in the bill that was passed for specific things. So we put these out because we've seen through time that our success rate goes up if we're consistent and we have priorities. And that's a specific ask of our federal delegation because they feel like they can be more effective if we stay together as a community. So in other words, all 3 local governments don't have separate road projects. NDOT have a different list, counties that may be affected. It really is some consistency is what the federal delegation is looking for, and that's why we do this. The project in particular, Highland Ranch, is one that's well suited to being, for lack of a better term, shovel-ready because it's already been through the environmental process, and that often is a process that'll take multiple years. So even though the money's available, it takes years before we can even get to a place where we can spend the money. So that's why it's on there. In addition, the Sparks Boulevard project, which is well underway with its environmental, puts that project in a unique place in order to acquire federal funds. So it's a combination of being consistent with projects that are most ripe for being constructed with federal grants. And then I would say we do our best through our MPO process to work with other MPOs. And then also we've had conversations, and I'm sure they'll be ongoing, with NDOT in terms of making sure that we don't send mixed messages for Washoe County to the federal delegation, because it does make it harder for them to acquire the funds if it looks like we are not on the same page.
Okay, that was helpful. Thank you very much. The only one to me, and then I'll move to the rest of the board for comments, that kind of stood out that wasn't on this list, and I'm going back to the community input, and again, I understand that the feds kind of want to see something that's a little bit, pun intended, down the road with regards to its environmental and some of its processes versus hasn't really kicked off, is the Mccarran Loop. The Mccarran Loop is something we struggle with on safety reasons, capacity reasons, all of those things. And I know NDOT's done a number of studies with regards to the safety. And that's what we hear from our community. That is where we are moving to put more of our dense housing product, which is going to therefore increase the traffic on the Mccarran Loop. And that's the one that just stood out to me as kind of missing in this list of a region-wide that touches every jurisdiction that wasn't on this list. So that's kind of my 2 cents. And then are these in order? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6?
No, we present them, sorry for the record, Bill Thomas, Executive Director. Those 6 are the top 6.
Okay.
So in other words, depending on what the funding source is, one of these would be the right one and the others really wouldn't apply, so.
Okay.
And also the funding amount. For example, on the bridges, Keystone's gonna be much more expensive than Sierra. If it looks like there's a grant opportunity where the money's simply not there to do the whole project, we would pivot then, for example, to Sierra, because it's a smaller project. And
Okay.
it's always the issue, as we've seen with our grants, we ask for as much as we can get, but I would say our most recent experiences, they tend to be a little less than what we ask for. They're substantial, we just got $7 million, which we'll talk about soon, and $23 million for the project before, but rarely will we get the money to build the whole project.
Got it. Okay, commissioners. Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Thomas, you mentioned the existing programs, but I'm assuming that these are additional funding desires. So I'll give you the example. Pyramid to Los Altos, that's already been funded, and so that's why it's not on this sort of wish list.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, all right. Because I know that that's a priority, but this is a slightly different group.
And I think the most important thing, if I can, on that is that, what we don't want to do, we want our board as well as the community to know what we're going after. So this is for everybody to understand. If money is available and there's a grant request, these are the projects we're going to ask for.
Okay. How will we determine priority in the future? Which is the cream and that rises to the top? Will this board determine that? Will staff determine that? Will the feds determine that? Will my dear friend Director Swallow determine that?
Well, I would say and certainly Christina can speak for herself, but I think, when you look at 395 widening, that obviously would not happen without direct participation with.
Oh, no, that's a huge one. And I thought that was already programmatically in place, that was, we needed to get the spaghetti bowl done first, and then once we, you know, and I mean, that makes perfect sense. If we would have widened 395, it just gets you to the traffic jam faster.
I would, in answer to that question, the objective here is to maybe accelerate as best we can based on funding. In other words, you know, we're very familiar as a board with the fact that we have a lot of needs, and we can only get them done based on resources. So this is not intended to preempt or to move money around to other places. This is if there's an opportunity, you know, reflecting what the community sees as its priorities, if there's an opportunity to get additional federal funds to apply to that 395 widening project, this is a statement that that's what we're going to do.
Okay, all right. But you still didn't answer my question, which
Yeah.
was.
Who makes the final call?
Who makes the final call?
Okay, sorry. Well, ultimately, it would be, for most of these projects, it's going to be the Federal Highway Administration because they're the federal source. You know, we'll put the application, the grant in, they would determine whether we get it, how much,
Got it.
just
Okay.
like we've been. But I would point out that the bus maintenance facility would likely be an FTA as opposed to the FHWA. So ultimately, it's their decision.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Anything, Mayor Lawson?
I think it matters where the pot of money comes from as to which project gets done. So that's pretty simple.
Christina's shaking her head. She's like, yep. Did you have anything, any input on this one?
No. Not directly. When we get to my report, I'll give a little of a highlight. I wasn't planning on doing, but I'll go a little bit deeper into.
Okay, fantastic. Any other questions or comments from board members? Okay, hearing none, may I get a motion?
Second.
I have a motion, a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Item 5.3, approve the proposed new projects for 2023. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Jordan. Good morning, Vice Chair Lawson. I'm Brian Stewart with the Director of Engineering of RTC, and I'm pleased to come before you with our program of projects. As you heard in our federal priorities, this is aligning to that so we can get going on some of these projects. So I'm happy to provide you the opportunity to hear about the new projects that we'll be adding to our program of projects for FY 2023. This is our annual process for obtaining approvals to use fuel tax on the street and highway program and projects within the region. NRS provides us the legal framework for the approval process to use the fuel tax. I'm here today requesting your approval to use the fuel tax on these projects. Again, to align with the federal priorities that you just heard about in the previous presentation, the POP needs to be approved so RTC can aggressively pursue some of the federal funding that is out there. The IIJA Act is providing a unique opportunity for our region and some increase in federal funds that we might see here in the state of Nevada. The approval of the project will allow staff to begin the process to start working on these projects and also work on the annual programs. So jumping right into it, our annual programs, first and foremost, which we put a lot of effort on, is our existing infrastructure. This is our pavement preservation program. We spend $22.5 million on our annual budget, and it's broken into 3 categories for pavement preservation. You have the preventative side. We keep the roads in the best possible condition before they deteriorate into the other modes or other methods that we have to use to fix them. We have the rehab and reconstruct. That's the worst case. Those are the roads that are total failed. One of the pictures here is a rehab job. And that's where you would go into the structural section and actually rebuild the whole road section. And then the corrective maintenance is this middle ground between the slurry seals and between the total rehab, where you might hear of a mill and fill or an overlay type of project that we try to extend the life of the road before having to expend the massive amounts of money when we go into the reconstruct side of it. So our goal is to keep our regional roads in good shape. We want that PCI, the Pavement Condition Index, high. We will have a goal to set that at 85, and we get close to that every year, and we want to continue that. This is always an evaluation. We collect data on a 3-year basis. So the whole region is looked at, and we provide those numbers. And ADT, we work with our pavement preservation team. The pavement preservation team is experts from each of the regional bodies to provide input and finalize the list that we will work on for projects under this program. The next regional program that we fund yearly is our traffic signals and intelligent transportation system. This is a $10 million per year program. It provides new traffic signals, it provides signal upgrades, and geometric improvements as needed. Again, this is coordination and effort in our region with what we call the TOMS Committee, the traffic and operation experts that are within our region at each of the jurisdictions that provide the input and analysis and background onto which projects would be put forth in any given year and we start working on. So now getting into some of the new projects that we'd like to get working on, as we've shown a need in our regional transportation plan and some of our special studies. The first being our South Virginia Street widening. This is Longley to the I-580 on-ramps. This need was identified in the South Meadows study that was completed recently. There is northbound queuing that's on the freeway here as people are in the AM commute are coming and getting off the freeway here to go northbound. And so we want to look at that and provide a solution for that. It's estimated to be $2.5 million. I'm very aggressively saying we could move into construction using the fuel tax on this as a improvement that we could put in 23. The next new project we'd like to start working on, and this is Ground Zero. We have to start from Ground Zero. We don't have a whole lot of data and a lot of information on this, but it is identified in the regional transportation plan as a capacity need, is to look at widening the Pembroke road between Mccarran and Veterans Parkway. We would widen it from 2 to 4 lanes. It's estimated to be almost a $22 million project, and we'd be proposing to start construction in 2025 on that project.
Question.
Yes, Commissioner Horton.
Brian, how is that $22 million? And this is, there's a burr under my saddle. This is one of those things that I asked about when we were doing Veterans Parkway, about widening those roads while we were doing this. And now we're going back and doing these things at a cost of $22 million. That can't be more than about 1.5 miles. Maybe, I mean, I haven't driven it in a while, but I used to drive it constantly getting up to Hidden Valley. How is that a $22 million lift? Are we gonna do a grade separated interchange at Veterans?
I don't know yet, to be honest. I'm Brian Stewart, Director of Engineering.
Is that why it's driving the cost of it?
We have to look at it and provide the engineering and be able to upgrade the cost estimate. Really what is driving this one is there is a lot of right-of-way. We don't have the right-of-way on Pembroke to take it from. And so we need to get in there and do that work. And land is expensive. It's been moving up. So that's a big inflation item with respect to it. It is nearly 2 miles of road, and widening a road that's about what it is running is about the $10 million per mile for that widening. So it's big numbers, but big improvements that would be happening.
So this goes to colleagues. When we do these large projects, it always seems as if we fall short. And I've heard this time and time again, and I'm going to be a little crass here. Well, we ran the models, to which my response is all models are wrong, some are useful. And I've seen this. I saw this at Pyramid and Mccarran, not taking that third lane to the top of Disc. I asked then Director Gibson numerous times about doing grade separated intersections at Veterans and Pembroke and Miraloma when we were doing this project. This is not many of you, this is going back. RTC falls short many times, and we cut it back, and it's like, well, we don't want to spend that money now. And then we spend, instead of it costing us at the time, it probably would have cost us $5 or $6 million to do it at the time. We spend $22 million to do it now. So I'm frustrated. I don't know whether it shows. I'm frustrated. Thank you.
So aligning with what we just saw on the previous presentation on our federal priorities, we're going to assume federal funding, but we need to start doing work on these projects so that we can align and be aggressive in our competition for the federal funds. These are identified in our regional transportation plans as needs, and we're moving them forward appropriately during this time where we have this unique opportunity. Keystone Bridge is one of those. It is $47 million estimated as a replacement. It's a long structure. It's nearly 400 feet. We would propose to start construction if all lines up with our federal funds, and our priorities would be 2026. That would be after Arlington Bridges is finished. Corridor study has been completed on this project, so we have some baseline information to bounce off of.
Can I ask a last question? Brian,
Yes, Commissioner Hartung.
Is Keystone, is that our right of way, or is that an NDOT right of way? Because I don't know a lot of roads. I mean, I never knew that Glendale was NDOT's until.
That's correct. It is. It's the city of Reno's right of way.
All right. Thank you.
The Sierra Street Bridge replacement is also one of the federal priorities. Assuming we can chase some federal funds with this, we'll be working with our partners, which is the Truckee River Flood District, as well as NDOT, always on bridge projects because of the way the federal money does work in the bridge program, the HBR, as well as these other buckets of money that we've seen is coming forward, and there's an increase of funds in there. So this is an aging bridge, has flooding conditions on Sierra Street. As you can see, it is in the middle of town, so it does have a very unique presence and architecture with respect to it. It's estimated at a $29 million investment to replace that. And we would not be able to get to that until probably after the Keystone project. So that's why it's out on the 28 timeframe. And then lastly, this is a subset of the Pyramid 395 widening. This is a intersection improvements that we'd start looking at. We have looked at it, as Bill identified. It was in the environmental document. It is a grade separated interchange as proposed in that. So we want to look at advancing that subset of the project to improve the capacity and safety of that intersection as the north continues to grow. Again, we'd be chasing federal funds. It is a federal project already, so it's going to be much easier to compete for those funds in being in that area. But we need to always have match funds for that, and that's where the local fuel tax comes in, is matching to those federal dollars. And so those are the new projects. In conclusion, happy to answer any more questions as we're move into starting some new work.
Thank you very much. As we close out that section, do any commissioners have any questions, further questions or comments? Okay. No more questions?
That's it. Motion, just need a motion.
Okay. I didn't know if you had something else you needed to complete on that presentation.
I was getting ready for the next one.
Okay. All right. May I get a motion to accept?
Actually, I do have a question.
Commissioner Hartung.
I mean, Mr. Stewart, have we, and I know that I've talked to NDOT about this, but have we looked at, is it on our radar at all, that acceleration lane coming off of Calle de la Plata that would connect to the Hall Road and give us a third lane heading south on Pyramid, which could be a very easy lift?
My understanding, it is on our radar. NDOT is taking the lead on looking at that. I know they're conducting a road safety audit, and some of that information will be provided in that.
Okay.
So that's on the radar.
I appreciate you. Thank you. Motion to approve.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Okay, we're now on item 5.4, the Interlocal Cooperative Agreement with the City of Reno, Washoe County.
Again, Brian Stewart, Director of Engineering. Good morning. This is the next step that we take after the approval of the POP or the projects, the new projects, is we ask for interlocal agreements that assigns the responsibilities for delivering these projects and our work between each of the jurisdictions. So the first one, item 5.4, is between the city of Reno, the county, and RTC so that we can move forward. So the next step in this process, if this gets approved here, would be to go in front of the Washoe County Commission and seek approval for entering into that agreement. So before you today, just looking at that approval of the what we call the ICA, the Interlocal Cooperative Agreement between the City of Reno and Washoe County, specifying the responsibilities in delivering the certain new projects in RTC's FY 2023 program of projects.
Thank you very much. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments? Hearing none, may I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Item 5.5, approve an interlocal cooperative agreement with City of Sparks in Washoe County.
Again, Brian Stewart, Director of Engineering. Item 5.5 is the ICA Interlocal Cooperative Agreement with the City of Sparks, Washoe County, and RTC, specifying the responsibilities of delivering certain new projects in the RTC's FY 2023 program of projects.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
All finished?
I'll get to work.
Great work. Thank you very much. Okay, we are now on item 5.6, receive a report on fiscal year 2022 to 26, transit optimization plan strategies, or TOPS. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Michael DeLude. I'm the Senior Transit Operations Planner for the RTC. I'm here to introduce Gary Hewitt, wherever he went. He's the project manager for the consultant team of transportation management and design. He's here to give a report on the transit optimization plan strategies project that we're doing, which replaces what was known as our short-range transit plan, or SRTP. Here's Gary Hewitt.
Great. Good morning, Commissioners. Again, my name is Gary Hewitt with Transportation Management Design, and we're a transit consulting firm based in San Diego, California. We specialize in helping transit systems such as yourselves optimize their transit services to operate more efficiently, to grow ridership while also ensuring long-term financial sustainability. So as Michael mentioned, TOPS stands for the Transit Optimization Plan Strategies. When it's eventually approved by the board, it'll be a short-range transit plan outlining the operating and capital priorities for the transit system over the next 5 years. The last effort was completed in 2017, and it's important also to note that this will inform the transit component of the regional transportation plan, the next one, and it also is takes a lot of the priorities from that in terms of helping develop recommendations for the next 5 years. So as our firm has conducted our work during the pandemic with agencies across the country, we've noticed some trends and lessons learned when conducting these types of studies. First is the nationwide labor shortage, which has been plaguing the transit industry. Many agencies have not been able to fully restore their transit service back to pre-pandemic levels because drivers have either left or it's difficult to find new ones. There's also a trend of agencies focusing their resources on essential workers, which allows them to provide more all-day and weekend services. The pandemic has also given us an opportunity to make larger systemic changes to transit systems. And this is really based on just the pandemic, and the general public and the riders understand that there's been changes in travel patterns. And so we really like looking at the types of services provided. So fixed route, microtransit, and trying to find the right mix. And also during the pandemic, we've developed new ways to do customer engagement, which has been a little more difficult, but we found that done correctly, we can get the same amount or even more engagement than we did pre-pandemic. So this slide outlines the tasks, including the TOPS project. So we're wrapping up task 2, which is a review of the existing service and demographics in the Truckee Meadows area, and I'll be talking a little bit about that in the presentation today. We also compared RTC to other similar agencies as part of Task 4, which is a peer review. And now we're in the process of getting initial feedback from existing customers and the general public through a survey, which I'll talk a little bit about. These and the other tasks will be used to develop draft recommendations, which we'll present to the public in February. And then after responding to the feedback that we receive, we'll bring back some final recommendations for the board's consideration. So in addition to the service recommendations, our scope of work also includes other deliverables, including a technology plan for transit, a review of customer service practices, and developing a comprehensive strategy to retain and attract new riders. And for those tasks, we have additional consultant support in these areas. So here's a little bit on the peer review. So during our review of 10 peer agencies, there were some notable findings listed on the slide. And just of note, this data was from 2019 pre-pandemic. So the chart in the upper left shows per capita transit use among residents in the Truckee Meadows, which is higher than most of your peers. This indicates that public transit is well used in the area and serves an integral role in the transportation system. The chart below it shows passengers per revenue mile of service, which is a measure of how efficient the current system is in operating, which is performing better than its peers. And what you're really looking at here is how well the system is used compared to how much service is being provided. Some items that we'll look at in more detail as part of this study include the short trip lengths and lower bus speed than most of your peers. It's important to note during our review that the system operates more cost effectively than most of your peers. So it's been the case with all transit agencies. RTC Washoe saw a major ridership decrease during the pandemic, which has not completely recovered. Weekly boardings dropped from 158,000 in September 2019 to 100,000 per week in April 2021. As shown in the graph in the lower right, RTC did fare better than most agencies across the country. This is likely due to the essential workers that use the transit system here, as well as the service not initially being reduced during the pandemic. The map on the left shows the 2019 ridership per stop in red and the 2021 ridership in blue for the fixed route and flex ride services. The dot size is based on average weekday ridership. So ridership is down across most stops, but there are some areas where ridership remains steady or even increase, and this is something we'll be looking at as part of the study. This slide illustrates the level of weekday ridership for all of the different public transportation services provided by the agency. The size of the box on the left indicates how much each route or service contributes to the overall ridership. So the table on the right summarizes the ridership into some key categories. So one finding was your top 7 routes in terms of ridership carried about half of the ridership. The balance of the other 15 routes carry about 36%. The van pool program carries 9% of the ridership, and that is a really, really big number and a best practice in public transit, as it's a very cost-effective way to provide commuter service. Access service provides 2.3%, Flex Ride 1.4%, and the regional connector to Carson 0.2%. Some other interesting notes is that Virginia Street between Rapid and Route 1 account for 20% of your daily boardings. And we think it's key that you provide improvements on these key corridors, which can impact the greatest number of riders. So in addition to reviewing the existing services, we also look to see if there's any gaps or areas which have emerged as needing additional transit since your last study. For this analysis, we looked at demographics, which traditionally influence transit ridership. So those include population, jobs, all trip activity, which is based on anonymized cell phone records, youth residents, college-age residents, low-income individuals, seniors, minority residents, persons with disabilities, and zero vehicle households. We then take those and compile them into a transit demand potential index, which is shown on the map. And this basically goes from the light purple to the dark purple color. So the dark purple are areas that have high transit demand potential, and the lighter purple areas have very low transit demand potential. And I know it's a little hard to see, so we have a little slightly zoomed in area here. So you notice that the highest demand areas are served by the higher frequency routes. On this slide, the green routes were 15 minutes service pre-pandemic, 15 minutes or better. The yellow routes were 30 minutes, and the red routes were 60 minutes. So we do see some pockets of demand in eastern portion, the eastern part of Sparks, as well as west of downtown, east of Mccarran, north of the 80, that we'll be looking at as part of the study. So as I mentioned, another important component of developing recommendations is to receive feedback from existing riders and the general public about what RTC is doing well and what could be improved. And so for this initial outreach, we're doing an online survey. The survey is being done in English and Spanish, started back in early December. And for existing riders, we asked the question, what are we doing well? What can we improve? We also have questions specific for former riders, the questions around why did they leave the system and what would it take to get them back. And we also have questions for non-riders about what would make them use RTC public transportation services, including where should the service go. We've gotten the word out through social media, onboard buses, and at major transit centers. And very unique for this area, which I think is a great way to get more survey responses, is survey respondents who provide their contact information can receive a 7-day free ride pass through the Token Transit app. So in terms of next steps, we've done an update to the public committee and the TAC last month. We had the presentation of the board meeting today. The community survey's out through the end of the month. And also we take that information, develop some initial route recommendations and service recommendations with staff, take that out to the public in February, receive feedback from the public, and then return to the board with some recommendations. So that concludes my presentation. Available for any questions.
Thank you very much. I'll go to Director Thomas, and then we'll go to board members for questions and comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to start by saying we have an exceptional collection of transit professionals at RTC, led by Mark Maloney and his group. And you've seen in these comparisons of comparable communities how well rated we are. And I would say that's directly attributable to the staff at RTC and their ability to manage the network as you as the board have set out in the past how it should operate. The recent series of events, which you also heard, that are beyond our control, the pandemic, deep and ongoing labor shortages, changes in how the workforce functions, and close to 60 days of work stoppage in the three strikes over the last 5 months have really changed our view on the public transportation in our community. Any one of these items would have caused us a pause for evaluation of our practices, but taken collectively, I would say we've been forced, and properly so, to use this TOPS planning process to really evaluate how we operate our local transit system in this community in its totality. To that end, I asked the board and the staff and the community to use this TOPS planning process to refocus us on the question of what is our goal in providing a public transportation service in Washoe County. That will be the question that we seek to answer over the next few months, and it will be very important for all those players, as I mentioned, the public, you as the board, as well as our staff, to really consider and weigh in answering that question.
Thank you very much. Okay, at this time, I do understand, and Director Thomas, if you can clarify for me, this is something, I'm not going to talk for the rest of the board, but I certainly know is my top priority as we move forward. We will be talking about this in depth at our strategic planning session, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That's one of the top, well, the session is focusing on everything related to our organization, but that certainly, as we're saying today, is a top priority. And this is your first check-in to acknowledge that that's your feelings and opinion too. I believe it is, but this is a good opportunity publicly to say that this is an important issue for you.
Okay, so today we as a board are just kind of very high level providing some comments, which will be going into depth at our strategic planning session, as well as responding to the public input over the next number of months. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to set, I didn't know how deep we were going today and what you wanted from us, so. Okay, with that, did you want just some high-level input at this point?
I'll leave it to Gary and Michael and the team specifically, but I do believe, given this venue and the way we're set up, that this would be a good first touch to know what we're doing with this plan and for you to give those high-level comments.
Okay, so we'll just dive right in. I'll go with Mayor Lawson and then Commissioner Hartung.
I think for me, I'd like to know, number one, the amount of people that ride, that use the service, and then what the busiest transit, the lines are, and how many rides per week kind of a deal. So I think for us, for long-term planning or for our planning, knowing what the busiest parts are and looking at maybe altering some of our service to be more effective. I'd just like a little more depth, the amount of people and where they're going.
Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm gonna take a similar but slightly different tact. You've got top 7 routes, 50%, 50.5% of our ridership. I'd like to know the times that they're riding. Is this commuter traffic? What happens because I no longer have a window office. I'm in an internal office now, but my first year or so when I was here, first term rather when I was here, I had a window office. And the route outside, you could literally during the day count on one hand the number of people, including the driver, that were on that bus. And so to me, that's a very ineffective route. So I'd like to know when people are riding. That's the first thing I'd like to know. And then the second thing that would be helpful for me is, are we seeing a change in terms of ages, of the age of ridership? In other words, it's no surprise I'm part of the silver tsunami. And as we age, which is the fastest growing segment of the population, there's going to be a lot of us who are not going to drive any longer and will want to use some type of public transportation, which is very important. So what's the age of the ridership that we're seeing, and are we actually able to serve that older population in a different way? Because I'll use the example. If, and I'm not, I'm close, if I was retired, I would not need to commute. I would need to be in that 8 o'clock or that 9 o'clock commuter traffic. But I would potentially have a doctor's appointment or want to go shopping or want to do something else that would be at a different time frame. So those are the kinds of things that I'd like to look at. And then those of you who've been around for a long time, you have heard me say this lots and lots of times. We have looked at various places in our community and said, there's no ridership. I'll use the example of Cold Springs or even Spanish Springs. I live in Spanish Springs. And I've had staff tell me over the past years, this is not you guys, this is going back a number of years, there is no ridership out there. Well, of course there isn't, because we forced people to have automobiles who moved to Spanish Springs or to Cold Springs. And so it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you don't supply a route, of course there's no ridership. You have to have an automobile or you don't move to those areas. You have to live somewhere where there's access to a bus route. So is there a way that we can potentially increase ridership by using different methodologies? And we've done a good job at this, by the way, recently by exercising the flex ride option and moving that into those farther areas where fixed routes don't make sense. So I have way more questions than time allows and way more comments than you probably want to hear, but those are kind of the top of my list right now. But I would love to have some one-on-one sessions where we could talk about What's a better way to increase ridership if pushing transit is really the goal? And I think transit is great. I have no issue at all with using transit as long as it's effective. Because if we say to someone, well, it's going to take you 2.5 hours to get to your destination versus 20 minutes of driving your car, what do you think they're going to do? It's a rhetorical question. So those are my comments, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all of your data. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what drives, what we do here at the RTC is the data and the feedback we get, which you guys are doing a great job of collecting that, and you'll continue to do that over the next 2 months. I think what we can, out of the issues that have occurred in our world and in our region over the last year have been very, very impactful in not a great way. But they've also provided an opportunity for us as a board and as a region to kind of rethink and reshape how we serve our ridership. And that, at the end of the day, is the single biggest goal, is the riders, right? How are we getting the riders to where they need to be in the most effective and efficient way? We had a couple commenters here today talk about the unpredictability of the lines and how difficult that was for them to get to their jobs or where they needed to go. The Dora, who is so great at coming to all of our meetings. I don't even know, is our survey, is it done in a way that the visually impaired can participate? If it's not, it should be. And how are we, here's what I have heard a lot over the last year is those that were most impacted were the ones who could least afford to be impacted. They were the most vulnerable amongst us. And they were the ones that were just really, really harmed by all of the things that occurred in the last year. So that is the focus of the who's and the when's and how they can best travel that we need to be studying. In my opinion, at the top of the list is how are we serving those individuals? Where are they? And which service best suits their needs? As an example, we often hear, and I know this is crossing over a couple of different options that we have here at the RTC, is you have somebody that needs to sign up for an access ride, but you have to sign up 2-3 days in advance. Two days in advance. And oftentimes, if you're having a medical issue and you need to get to the pharmacy, 2 days is tough. You need something that's a little more immediate, and that really kind of hinders the ability to serve that most vulnerable population in the way in which we want to serve them, right? So that's something I think we do need to. You can wait for public comment, sir, and we'll be glad to hear you. Thank you. No, you have to wait. If you'd like to fill out a form, we'll take your public comment as soon as we're done here. I'd love to hear from it. Thank you. So I do think that's important that we, as was asked previously, that we hear from the who's, the when's, the how many's, what transportation options they're using at this point, which would they rather prefer. The seniors are a huge one. I'm the chair of the Senior Citizens Advisory Committee and have been for a number of years. Fixed bus routes don't work for them. Difficult to get there. They're not on a fixed schedule. They need more on-demand service. And frankly, they need on-demand service that can help them get in and out of the bus or the automobile. Yes, and not necessarily paratransit. Interesting to see the numbers. The van pool is going crazy, which is a great indicator of the style of transport people are using more. The Flex Ride Creative, how do we maybe better deploy that in a more efficient way? And also the environment. Big buses going up and down the roads, particularly to far-flung places, probably not the most environmentally sensitive thing to be running up and down the roads. So I think it's a great opportunity. Out of some horrific events, I think we can reshape this transit organization. And I think we have an opportunity to look at the bus drivers and how we can attract and retain them, particularly in a year when it looks like we have more sales tax revenue in one-off sort of creative ways, because I know everybody's struggling. Everybody's trying to find a way to attract. I'm not saying money is the sole answer, but Lots of opportunities that can come of this, and I think we will get into more of this at our retreat. Strategic planning. Okay. Any other members have any questions or comments at this time? Before we make, yes, we gave you plenty to do. This is really important, and this is an opportunity. And technology, to me, is what's going to serve us the best, is what are the technology platforms that are going to allow us to deploy appropriate resources to the most, to the one that suits the rider the best in the most efficient way, hopefully on a single platform, and not have it be 17 different websites or apps or whatever. Commissioner Hartung.
Yes, and just one more thing, and maybe it might be helpful to look at communities that have instituted flex ride more so than fixed routes, and to see if that's a more effective way in terms of getting not just a higher ridership, but a different type of ridership. Thank you.
Thank you. We've often talked about that. How are we attracting the college student to get them introduced to transit in all of its forms, to get comfortable and used to riding it for the rest of their lives? And how can we better attract that demographic? That, I think, is a key component that we need to be looking at as well. Before we move into a motion to accept this report, we did have a public commenter. Madam Clerk, I don't believe he came and filled out a form, but he can do it after. If you'd like to come down and say a few words, and then we'll move into a motion.
Hi, my name is Ryan McKinney again. And Mr. Majority, you were somewhat correct. It is, well, the access, because I use access all the time, it is 1 to 3 days in advance you can schedule a ride. You can schedule a ride through the phone system or through the, it's through technology. You can start through this technology. And it's like 1 to 3 days, and the pharmacy, it's like, it is getting very hard for the senior population. For example, for you, Commissioner Hartung, if you're retired, or the senior population, to actually get to the pharmacy stuff, because it has been hard the last year or so. And also the top survey, if it's not, that's also another ADA violation. If it's not workable for the visually impaired, that is an ADA violation.
I think I got a head shake that it is online and can be accessed by the visually impaired. Thank you. Thank you, and I hope everybody will spread the word to fill out the survey, help us shape this for the future. It is critically important.
Ryan,
thank
can
you.
Please come over here.
Okay, did you gentlemen have anything else you'd like to say at this point before we move into a motion?
I just wanted to make a comment that there's going to be the Road Ahead segment on Colo 8 that will talk about this subject, and the survey information will be on that segment for people to see and be able to access both the QR code and the website address.
Can I make one comment about that?
Yes, Commissioner Hartung.
Yeah, I'm a little frustrated with us only utilizing Colo for the road ahead, because not everybody watches Colo. A lot of people watch KTVN and KRNV, and there's other sources. So it's a little narrow-minded for us to think that everyone is looking at just one outlet.
Director Thomas.
I would just want to say we hear you, and we use the resources we have, but I understand what you're saying. And we will look at that in terms of how we present this information to the public with the purpose of getting the maximum amount of participation.
That's the point. That's exactly.
Yeah, and ensuring that we are pushing this out through Spanish channels and in Spanish. I think KOLO, if I'm not, and someone can correct me, is they generously have, I believe, partnered with us and donated some time, I believe. So they've been good partners in this. We just need to expand that.
It's not a pejorative comment about Colo. It's just that not everybody watches the same station. That's my point as far as their news outlet is concerned. And the road ahead is great, but I will tell you, if you take a poll out there, there's probably a lot of people who don't know that it exists. Here's our man.
Well, I'll also say that it's being pushed out through our social media outlets as well.
Fantastic. I think this is a once in our generation opportunity to really rethink and reshape transit in our community, and we need the community's input and participation. And I would hope once we get a little further along that the information in which we have gathered, both from the community and the board, that can then go to the different jurisdictions for their input at the councils and the commissions as well, because they're the ones, the electeds are often the ones who have the most constituent contacts and can relay some of that information even for individuals that may not participate in the survey. So that's valuable information. So that would be good at some point to get that. Okay, I think we're ready for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, I believe we're on item 6.1, Executive Director Report.
You're correct.
Okay.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, the RTC is helping people celebrate responsibly and keeping our roads safe by providing free transit on New Year's Eve. Scheduled RTC transit service will be free on New Year's Eve starting at 6 p.m. until 2 a.m. on New Year's Day. Riding the bus is a safe alternative to getting behind the wheel or trying to walk home while impaired. Let's look out for each other on New Year's Eve. Plan your transit trip at rtcwashoe.com. The RTC is seeking, we just talked about this, community input on our transit optimization plan strategies, or the TOPS plan we just talked about, through an online survey that is available in both English and Spanish. As part of that survey, we're asking the community to tell us what they think about transportation in Washoe County. The RTC will use this input as we develop a plan to improve our region's transit system over the next 5 years. The survey is available at rtcwashoe.com and on RTC social media channels. People will take the survey and provide their phone number, will receive a free 7-day ride pass through Token Transit app. Thanks to our generous community members, the RTC's 2021 Stuff a Bus holiday food drive on December 9th at Sam's Club was overwhelmingly successful. We were able to stuff a bus full of more than 2,000 pounds of non-perishable food donations that we delivered to KTVN's Share Your Christmas event on December 10th. The food was then given to the Food Bank of Northern Nevada for distribution to our community. We're incredibly grateful to our community for this outstanding support, and we'd also like to thank Sam's Club on Kitsky Lane for hosting this annual event. At the end of November, the RTC received the official notice that we had obtained a $7 million raise grant for the Arlington Bridges project. I'm excited to see that the Arlington Avenue corridor received these DOT fundings to help the RTC move ahead with our community's downtown revitalization. At this point, I'd like to personally thank specific members of RTC staff who put together this application. As we all know, a major part of any application is the quality of the application you turn in. On behalf of myself and the board, I'd like to thank Judy Tortelli, Sharon Britt, Xuan Wang, and Nancy Muse for their excellent work in preparing another successful grant application, which will immensely benefit our community. Lastly, as you've heard, probably, our incredible Director of Finance, this is her last audit report, will be retiring from RTC on May 20th, 2022. RTC is beginning the recruitment process, so Stephanie, who's graciously agreed to hang around for a while and help transition the new finance director, can be in the best position to be successful for us as an organization. CPS HR Consulting has been retained to handle the recruitment process, and as I understand it, the position has been open and is now being publicized. I personally, and I'm sure all of you, would like to thank, and we'll get another chance, I hope, Stephanie. Till May, okay, yeah, she'll be here for the budget. Thanks, Stephanie, for all her public service to the community, as well as the help in transitioning this very important position for RTC. So that concludes my comments, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Any commissioners have any questions or comments about the director report? Okay. Hearing and seeing none, we will move on to item, those are informational only, so we don't need a motion on that. We'll move on to the federal report. Director Thomas.
Again, thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, sorry, I think.
That's a $10 fine.
Yeah.
Your car warranty is expired.
Somebody wants to sell me insurance or a car warranty, yes. On the 15th of November, President Biden signed the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, otherwise known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. That bill provides an opportunity for an 83% increase for transit compared to the FAST Act level. So a significant amount of money from the federal level is coming forward in the transit world, and we will be monitoring and watching that in terms of what it actually means for us here in Washoe County, and we'll be advising the board as we see opportunities for that funding to be applied. Some of it will be directly to programs that are funded by formula. So in other words, we will find out hopefully fairly soon what portion of funds will come to us as a result of our being a qualifying agent. The Reno urbanized area could receive Reno Sparks urbanized area could receive almost $59 million from fiscal years 2022 to 2026. While I share all that, I do want to remind everybody that that was the first and important part of moving forward with how the federal funds will be invested in infrastructure, but there still is the spending side of it. In other words, the appropriation. So as it sits right now, it's my understanding from the information I've received that there's a continuing resolution for government funding that's set to expire in February of 2022. So all of these programs and all of these efforts that are part of the Investment Act need that second piece, which is the actual appropriation, before we'll know for sure how the money might be applied. One last thing. On December 2nd, the Department of Homeland Security, TSA extended the face mask requirements for all public transportation networks, including public transportation agencies, through March 18th of 2022. So originally it was set to expire, I believe, in January, and it's been extended to December. So what that means is, of course, we will continue requiring masks on our buses and at our transit facilities, Centennial Plaza, 4th Street Station, and the Villanova facility. So that concludes my report, federal report, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, at this time we'll move on to the NDOT report. Director Swallow.
Good morning. It's good to be here. I normally start with safety, but there's been a couple of things that have come up while we've been having the meeting today, so I did want to touch on two items first. One, I'm excited to see what comes out of your transit plan. If you haven't heard me say it before, I know I've said it in a couple different places. I truly believe urban transit is the key to achieving not just our climate goals, but also really addressing some of the affordability issues we have in our communities across the state. So I'm excited to see how the transit program will work to provide transit more efficiently and effectively to the community here. So I'm excited about that. As a transit rider, I don't know that it'll help me. I'm on that corridor that that's not a high ridership corridor, but it's not important that it helps me. It's important that it helps the rest of the community. So I'm excited about that. And then the other thing I did just want to touch base a little bit about is the EJA. That's like the worst pronunciation of an acronym ever, EJA, or the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill. So from our perspective, it is a 5-year bill. There's been a lot of conversation out there about it being $2.5 billion for NDOT for Nevada, and it is. But I think what we all need to be aware of, and Director Thomas has brought this up a couple of times, is that that is not all new money. In fact, it is only approximately a 20% increase over what we would have been receiving over that same 5-year period. So it's a 20% increase in funding, which is good. We're not going to knock a 20% increase in federal funding. I should also make sure everybody understands that's 20% increase in federal funding. So it's less than a 10% increase in our NDOT budget. So just helping everybody understand what the bill is and what it isn't. We are very excited for the additional funding when it is appropriated. And Director Thomas just mentioned that right now, actually, because of authorization of a couple of new programs in the bill, the continuing resolution actually results in us receiving anticipating receiving slightly less than what we would have received this year otherwise. So it is important that that appropriations comes through so that we do get to spend that additional resource. Some of the things that we're looking at is when we've been asked for priorities, we're not talking specific projects as much as making sure that the funding comes through, the language around some of the new programs, making sure they understand the Western states perspective. And then when it comes to the projects that Director Thomas brought up, I really look at those as things that, 395 is programmed, right? So how are we going to make sure that we can position some of the program that is already on the plan? How do we position it to be successful in discretionary grants? And I think the Arlington Bridges are a good example of, we didn't have projects that were appropriate for that grant application, so we supported the RTC in working to get that grant. So I think we have a good group of partners across the state where we can all look together and say, is this a good opportunity for NDOT, or is this a good opportunity for another local agency, and how do we work together? Because whether it's our project or your project, we need them all to move the people around our communities. So we're very excited about that. I should note that in the bill, there is more funding for discretionary grants than ever before, and that's kind of a mixed bag. I think we tend to do okay in Nevada on those discretionary grants, but then we're competing. Versus if it was formula funding, we would be able to just know what we have, be able to deliver the projects, know the timelines. When you're applying for discretionary grants, there's always a little bit of a question: are we going to get the money? If we do get the money, how much can that affect us and our ability to deliver? So we're excited about the additional funding should it get appropriated. We're excited about that, and I look forward to working with you as we adjust our program. For expectation purposes, if fiscal year 2022 appropriations come in, we're looking at NDOT, I think after suballocations, it's less than $50 million more. And so we're looking to figure out what would those projects be, what would the program be, how would we make sure to obligate. Some of the conversations we've been having is, do we do a design build project so we can obligate it, but the actual investment happens in fiscal year 2023. So we're working on some creative strategies and really looking at what are already our priorities, what are already on the plan. Can we move some things forward? Are there some unmet needs that we haven't addressed that we can address? So,
May I ask a question on that?
yes.
So the 50 million is for north-south, the entire state?
Yes, and it's in a lot of different buckets.
Okay.
So, and we got an appropriation table, an authorization table, like how it splits across those buckets. So it has in there some of the resiliency funding. It has in there some of the carbon reduction program funding. So we're going to have to look and see how do those buckets work across the state? And we're going to look and figure out how we can deliver that overall. Yeah, so it's completely statewide.
Thank you.
Yeah. And if anybody's wondering how I went from 20% of roughly 400 million is 387, I think is what we had last year, how I went from 20% of 400 to 50. That doesn't quite work the same. It's because of some of the suballocation that goes to the local agencies. It's also because of the obligation limitation that the Federal Highways applies to the project. So they tell us that we're going to get this much, but you're only allowed to spend a percentage of that. So, all right, safety. I don't have a good story to tell you when it comes to safety. My team members, when they've been here in my place over the last couple of months, have not been able to tell you a good story. We are tracking a 20% increase over last year. That was as of the end of November. In early November, we met the total fatalities for the worst 2 years in the last decade. So the worst 2 years in the last decade were something along, I think we're 318 people lost their lives in 2016 and 2018. And we hit that number in mid-November. And 349 was end of November. I know people have lost their lives since then. It is not something to be proud of. It is something we all need to work on every single day across the state. I should note that in Washoe County, fatalities have actually decreased. So Washoe County is one bright star in the terrible night that we're facing right now with traffic fatalities. I'm not going to tell you the specifics on where things happened because I did that 2 years ago, or actually last year in Clark, and then suddenly it went awry. So I don't want to, we're going to skip that. So 41 people across Washoe County in 2021 have lost their lives. 10 were pedestrians, 1 was a bicyclist, and 10 individuals on motorcyclists. You can see on the slide across the state, impairment and speeding are again the top causes of fatal crashes. Nevada State Police say for a crash, we talk about one crash every month. Nevada State Police say 2 motorcycle riders were suspected of impairment in a crash that left one of them dead a few weeks ago. The crash actually occurred in Silver Springs in late October. Officials say 1 Suzuki motorcyclist was riding behind a Honda motorcycle when the front tire of the Suzuki hit the back of the other bike. Both motorcycles rolled over and the Suzuki rider lost his life. It is December. It is the middle of the holiday season. Whether you're happy about the holidays or sad about the holidays, I know the holidays aren't great for everybody. I think people do tend to imbibe and consume, and I just remind everybody, drive sober, find somebody, stay at the house where you're at, find somebody else to take you home, take transit, drive sober, and remember to slow down. Speed and speeding are a lead cause of crashes across the state and fatalities. All right, sustainable funding study. That extra 20%, which equates to maybe this year about 50 million, is roughly 10% of our annual funding gap in the state of Nevada. We actually have approximately a $530 million annual funding gap across the state, which is the impetus behind our sustainable funding study and advisory working group that was initiated this past legislative session. We did not have a meeting in December. Our team is working on applying 30 different funding mechanisms to our funding principles. The board, the advisory working group, developed some funding principles that really look at funding sustainability and viability. Does it work to meet the gap today? Does it work to meet the gap tomorrow? How, because not everything's going to be able to do both. Looking at flexible use of the revenue equity, both for transportation users as well as social equity. So now they're looking at applying 30 different funding mechanisms, and those mechanisms are things from a fuel tax, which is more of an excise charge, to a sales tax, to just a regular, to a VMT type thing, an EV registration fee. They are looking at all of the things. They've looked across the nation to see how everybody funds their system, and they're looking at those, and they're going to apply them to those principles and say, hey, this one's great on principle X, but it's bad on principle Y. And I imagine that they're going to present those to us in January. In March and April, the AWG will be meeting face-to-face to really have deep discussions about what the recommendations will be. And I encourage anyone, these are public meetings, so you're welcome to go to the website. The information's on the website. You're also welcome to watch the meetings and attend and make comment if you have any concerns. Additionally, in January, we're going to start a roadshow where we go out and we start talking about the project and the recommendations that could come up or the findings to date. So I imagine we'll ask for an agenda item so that we can talk about them here at your board meeting in January. All right. SBX update. Oh, sorry, skipped that one. So we always provide you a monthly update, and a good news, the closure of the Wells on-ramp to eastbound I-80 was originally scheduled to be closed through November. It was completed early. I know we're in December, but it was completed early. Always good to be completed early. The improvements, those improvements will improve safety and mobility at the Spaghetti Bowl by reducing the lane shift at that merge point. So we're really working to try to figure that out. Bridge girders have been set over Kitsky Lane, and I think that's the picture on the right, is placing those bridge girders, and retaining walls between 2nd Street and the Truckee River are in process. We're currently paving sections of the future new southbound lanes. That's the picture on the left between Vassar and Mill. Those lanes won't open till traffic until next year, but the current paving will allow us to keep the ramps open to traffic while paving the future southbound exit points. The eastbound I-80 to southbound 580 ramp remains reduced to 1 lane, as we've been reporting the past few months. Daytime lane reductions on Mill and 2nd Street are ongoing, as well as the continuing intermittent east to north and east to south ramp closures. Kitsky Lane also has ongoing overnight full closures with notice provided. And we just remind motorists that the travel delays should be expected in the area and encourage them to consider alternate routes, allow for extra travel time, slow down, and be attentive to the changes that are coming. So I think I reported to our board on Monday that we expect the new ramps at the Second and Mill to open next spring, and we're still on schedule for full completion late next year. All right, advanced signal warning system. So I want to start just by thanking Commissioners Lucy, Hartung, and Dare for meeting with us and having conversations in the last couple of months about these systems. We've also been engaging with the public about upcoming changes through advisory board meetings, other outreach, public involvement opportunities, and we've heard from a lot of the public. Commissioner Hartung, you've sent me some of those emails. A lot of those members of the community have emailed our team directly, and we are replying and providing the information that we have.
It's a small number, by the way, that I've sent to you.
Thank you. So we are excited to have a lot more community and neighborhood meetings scheduled after the holidays, including meetings with the Spanish Springs Community Advisory Board on January 5th, the Warm Springs Community Advisory Board on January 12th. In February, we'll meet with the South Truckee Meadows Advisory Board, and we're in the process of scheduling a meeting with the City of Reno Ward 2 Neighborhood Advisory Board. These advanced signal warning systems are stationed in advance of traffic signals, and they take various forms. They are all aimed at, sorry, there's a lot on here, advising motorists of an upcoming traffic signal. As you know, we completed our advanced signal warning system guidelines in 2019 in compliance with national engineering guidelines and in conjunction with our local government partners who maintain and operate the systems. And this includes the cities of Sparks, Reno, Carson, Elko, Las Vegas, Henderson, Boulder City, as well as Douglas, Clark, Nye, and other counties. Washoe County was one of them. The current flashers were based on older national engineering guidelines, where drivers traveling at a speed of 45 miles an hour or greater, and as a treatment at the first signal approaching the urban area. Through the years, speeds and the rural nature of some of these roadways have changed. That is why last winter we began updating the operation of some of these advanced signal warning systems across the state to align with the specific geometry and engineering needs of each specific intersection in compliance with the national engineering guidelines and our local government, and in conjunction with our local government partners. Traffic signals at intersections will continue to operate as they do today, so we're not changing the signals. Only the advanced signal warning features at some intersections will be modified in accordance with the new state guidance, and that will vary by location based on individual assessments and field conditions. Some of the advanced signals have changed from flashing at the onset of an upcoming yellow to a static or continuously flashing. Timing of the flashing advanced signals may also be modified to enhance safety based on changes we've seen in the speeds. Some advanced signals may be removed entirely due to the updated guidance. The goal of this update is a unified statewide approach that promotes consistency in the treatment of the advanced signal warning system specific to each intersection's individual needs. This will enhance the safety of the traveling public and promote better driver behavior. Similar modifications in other states have shown a reduction in travel speeds. Construction in Washoe County is scheduled to begin in March of next year. Construction is already complete in Carson and Douglas counties, Clark County and Las Vegas, northeastern Nevada, and the Elko area. So Washoe County is the last county for us to implement in. We will be conducting follow-up studies on a 1-year and 3-year basis for safety along both Pyramid and Mount Rose corridors. NDOT and UNR will also be conducting LiDAR studies for before and after advanced signal warning system modifications for both corridors. In addition, we are pleased to continue our partnership with RTC Washoe to improve safety and mobility on Pyramid by widening from Queen to Los Altos. We talked about that a little bit earlier today, from 4 to 6 lanes, and reconstructing a section of highway just north of that. That project is expected to begin in spring of 2023. And we want to thank the RTC for joining us and hosting an in-person public meeting on the Pyramid project earlier this week, and providing an update on the future widening. Both in-person and virtual meeting options were available. I think we had not quite 30 people, over 20, between 20 and 30 people attended in person. The online portion of the Pyramid Highway virtual meeting remains available through December 21st. That's next week. You can find information in both English and Spanish at pyramidhighway.com. So we are moving forward with the advanced signal warning system. We have done the whole rest of the state. We have not seen any detrimental impacts in those locations. And It looks like you want to ask me something.
No, I know we're about to lose a member, and we're going to lose a quorum when we lose the member. So, and I know this is of great interest to you, Commissioner Hartung.
I've actually asked to have a conversation
Okay,
with the
okay.
director, sort of offline, but I don't know whether her time schedule will permit it either.
I have one more slide after this.
Okay.
Okay. And lastly, two things. When it comes to winter, I want to start actually by extending appreciation to our staff and contracting team who worked diligently to quickly repair a failing drainage pipe under Mount Rose last weekend. It was an emergency project. We went out there on a Saturday and found that we had significant erosion. We fixed it on Saturday, but when we went in the following week to clean it up, we realized that the pipe was essentially not there anymore. And we know the whole bottom, and it was completely eroded out from underneath the road. And we know that it's hard when we have to close a road completely, but we also know that if we close a road to preemptively fix something, it is far less of an impact than if we lose the road. And so our team, we anticipated it would be a 2-day closure all weekend, and they actually completed all of the work on Saturday. So I really just want to thank the team for getting out there, opening the road, and being able to repave it and prepare for in advance of the storms that we happened, which is the last thing. This picture was actually taken just a couple days ago. It was taken this week. Our crews have been preparing to keep the roads clear for months. We told you a little bit about this at our last meeting. They began annual winter preparations in early fall by readying our snow plows and other pieces of snow and ice equipment. You probably saw them clearing the roads and helping commuters get to their destinations as the snow fell this past week. This year presents an additional challenge for our maintenance teams who work incredibly hard all year, and especially over the winter months as we face a staffing shortage. I've been told in this region we're at about 50% of our regular winter maintenance crews, and so we are going to see the impact of that, unfortunately. We do extend our appreciation to the team who've been doing an outstanding job during these storms and really working to make sure that our primary corridors are being kept as safe as they can be for the people who rely on them every day to get to work and to home. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. And they have done a phenomenal job. And it looks like they're going to be gearing up for another crazy week. So kudos to them. I think everybody in Public Works and road maintenance right now deserves an extra Christmas gift because, boy, they're doing a lot of work lately. Okay, any questions or comments?
Who are we going to lose?
We're going to.
I have an 11:30 appointment I have to be to.
Yeah. So we got about 5 minutes. Can you give us 5? 5. Okay. 3 to 5. All right, Commissioner Hartung, make it quick.
I want to thank Director Swallow for the follow-ups on the advanced signal warning systems. I had an issue this very morning that they literally saved me. I was behind a big rig. The lights were flashing. I started backing off because I saw the lights flashing. I could not see the signal because the size of the big rig impaired it, and that because of the tractor trailer, and I was not that close to them. They went through the intersection, and I stopped. Had I followed them through, not being able to see those, I would have been out in that intersection very, very likely. I don't know whether it would have been, I don't know how long the yellows are timed for, but it underscored for me that even though you think you can see that intersection, when you get in those precarious situations, those things they're lifesavers. And the last Citizens Advisory Board meeting where one of your staff members was ill and was not able to come out and talk to the community, we had over 50 people at that meeting, and the greatest number of comments were about those advanced signal warning systems. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, at this time, we're going to move into item 7, Commissioner announcements and updates. Do we have any for future meetings, Commissioner? Do you want me to start, and then as you find your notes? Okay, so we had, the comments of the day, staffing shortages. They're nationwide. They're across every industry. They are impacting, I think, transit the most. Transit is hugely impacted. You can't work from home. That's what a lot of people are looking for, is working from home. Yeah, it's not an option. That being said, I have heard that some of the riders are being less than maybe cordial when a bus is a little bit late because of the shortages. And I wonder, as we look at the audio for the ADA announcements, if there might be an opportunity to remind the general public to be kind, that we're short-staffed like everybody else in the service industry, and to just remember that, and that to not take it out on the drivers. I think that a little bit of kindness goes a long way. Other than that, I think we've got all the things for our strategic planning. I don't have anything that goes on a regular agenda. So, okay. Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At some point in maybe the next quarter, Mr. Thomas, can we get an agenda item regarding the RIF program, the RIF credits, the outstanding RIF credits, the liability to RTC, what the timing of those, whether there's expirations on them? You've heard me say this before, RTC created a fiat currency, and that currency is out there. What happens to RTC if I bring in a whole ton of credits because I've got a bunch of them to offset my impact and huge amounts of infrastructure needs to be built? How do we deal with that? And so I'd really like to know. And then I'd also like to know what our numbers are projecting for what I always used to call, and I know it has a different name now, the CCFEA, the Capital Contribution Front-End Agreement Program. What are we projecting in that? Are there developers? Because I know we have some developers in Spanish Springs that are going to come forward and build some improvements, but it's likely going to come under a different type of a program. And so, and then the other thing that I'd like to know in that presentation is, what is the RIF program designed to offset? So when I pay money in, if I'm a developer, because I know what it used to be, but it's kind of morphed over time. It used to offset my impact on the regional roads that my customers, those people who are buying either goods or services from me, if I have a convenience store or a fast food restaurant or whatever, or a restaurant in general, or some type of a business, or versus the residential customers that put VMTs on our roads. And so where is that RIF money going in, and how is it offsetting their actual impacts? Those are kind of the questions that I think it's important for this board to have a discussion on, an updated discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mayor Lawson? I have nothing. Okay. Thank you very much. All right. I believe we are at this point moving on to closing public comment. Madam Clerk.
We have no public comment for item 8.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I may I get a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
We are adjourned. Merry Christmas, everybody.